Hi there, this is Popo, I hope you're all fine. Welcome back to the Matches Neural Tournament, round 3. And today we're going to review the two games played between MadTanker and Artika. So let's get started. Okay, so for the first game, MadTanker gets the white pieces with the Tikis faction, and Artika gets the black pieces with the Chtulu's faction. The Tikis are very tricky because their moveset is about to change almost every turn, so this is very hard to predict where they're going to land, and they can go for dirty tactics. On the other hand, the Chtulu gets some mana points with some kind of action, passive or active, and these mana points can be dealt with to promote early some kind of pieces. So the longer they last with some mana points, the stronger they would be. So try to checkmate them the quickest possible, as you're going to have some very bad time. Let's see how it goes. The game starts with pawn to e4, with limb to e5, totems to c4, tube to f6, pawn to d3, eyeball to b4 with check, pawn to c3, eyeball to c5, pawn to a4, castles, pawn to b4, eyeball to e7, and Moai to e2. So something not that classic, but that can be perfectly playable here. See that this Moai decides to move here, one square, and when it moves, it switches between a knight and a king. At the same time, see that now the Chtulu have 14 points of mana, because the wings here gains 1 mana points per turn because they are alive. So 7 turns equals to 7 by 2, so 14. So the game continues with limb to d6, so trying to get something. We have pawn to f3, now a limb to b6, which is played, mask to a2, limb to a6, so trying to avoid any future awful stuff. Here I guess this mask could be interesting. Here you see that depending on the color square, the masks are not the same. Here this is a rook by 4, here this is a crisscross by 2. So it doesn't control this pawn. So by putting here, it threats to advance forward, and also maybe it can try to slide here. So that would be interesting. Limb to a6 avoids any further push here. So now we have Chimp to b2, and here you see that this shrine can promote. So this is a queen that promotes on the first move. So if you go one square around, it would promote to a hog. But we'll discuss this piece later if it gets on the move. And if it gets exactly 2 squares away, then you would promote to a chimp as it walks into the game. And this chimp is a queen by 2 that can also jump for their move, but they can throw some pieces on the way. So let's say that I would move here. It can put a piece and throw it this way. Or it can decide to throw this, to throw this, to throw this, even thus. It's no sense here, but a lot of pieces can pass through this piece, so very interesting mechanic here. In the game we have eyeball to b7, so controlling the diagonal, and now pawn to f4 is played. So it wants to strike here and get some exchange, but now we have a limb to d5, so striking back, so ask the totem to go somewhere else, and now we have pawn captures, eyeball captures, and because this eyeball captures, it gains immediately 10 points of mana, plus the 2 of the wings. So interesting. We have totem captures, and here you should capture with the heart here. The heart would be cool because if there is capture, you capture, of course, but also you get very well with this because you get a threat here, so you have to defend it first. So that can be defended with, let's say, Moai to e3, and after that you just have to put the heart to a6, and then you threat to capture that. So why not? In the game instead we have a tube to takes d5, and okay, the pawn captures, but see that now that this is near the tube, it gets some kind of mana stuff, because every piece or pawn near the tube would get 1 MP per turn. So okay, this boosts the mana of the Chtulu, so why not? We have now limb to c5, so trying to push on the dark squares. I'm not sure that this is the right move to be played here. I mean, all of these pieces are not doing anything, so maybe you can try to get something out of here with tube to d7, but at the same point I can understand that with this kind of position that would help the Chtulu to help the Tikis to be better here and get a very nice pawn chain. So maybe limb to c5 wants to avoid this, but after pawn to b5 and limb to a5, the position closed a little. Here we have Moai to f3, so the idea here maybe is to defend this pawn, and maybe you should castle somehow, because the king is right in the center. Looks very complicated. Wing to e8 is played, you can also play the 2 here, I mean this is not a bad move, and maybe you can try to claim this pawn back, I don't know. Wing to e8 is played instead, Chimp to c2 is played, and this is a very good move, because now you can decide to launch this here, you can launch this here, and that would be interesting for later attacks. We have Toem to d7, but instead of this we have Chimp to c4. And okay, this move is pretty weird. I mean, the idea is to try to get to this point and throw some pawns to get the promotion, but the Chtulu have too much activity, and now they just get to 15 points, so either limb gets to the opening square, then it can promote into a knight by putting 50 MPs. You can see on the left all the spells here that you can get, so you have to be careful here. Toem takes c5 is played instead, and this looks like you drop piece, but it comes with a very nice tactic, because after Moai takes e5, now eyeball to h4 is check, and after pawn to g3, now wing takes e5 check, king to d1, and now eyeball to g5. So the idea now is that you want to trade with some pieces, and after captures, and now the Chtulu are way better into the position, and there's a lot of stuff that they can go for. On the same point, they don't really defend this square, and I guess before going for this kind of attack, even okay, you see a tactic you go for, maybe putting this immediately here should be better here. But I mean, okay, with this kind of tactic, this is always cool. And now with after IR to g5, the Chimp goes into c6, so getting a tempo here. And what do you play here? Something you should go for is to play the wing to e8, and even the Chimp tries to throw on d7, you're just going to get here. The Chimp has no square to try to get further threats here, and the idea is to just going to get back and try to get collect the material here. So that would be a way to proceed. But instead in the game we have wing to b8, and this is very passive. I mean, this is not how you're going to get that. Something that you should try is the heart to f5. And now that tries to capture here, that tries to go here with a fork. I mean, this is a way of playing this. Also, another way to go here is to try to get, for example, this, and then you try to exchange the queens. And okay, the Moai to e2 is played, and now heart to f6. So the idea is to exchange the queens, and I really like this idea. Because after max to b2, let's say you captures, and then you see that this one is not doing anything, so maybe you can play the wing to c8, and there's no way you can defend this pawn. And with 77 mana points, you're going to promote soon limb, because with 100 mana points you can promote one of the limb on your territory to wing. So you're going to win very easily this game. But in the game we have instead Toem to e3, and I can't understand this move, because you had also this r to f3, which is a fork. And after, let's say, king to c2, now there's r to h1, and again, if you decide to play here, I just have to play here, and the position is still okay. And even if you try to get some very nice tactic, or again, after this, if you try to get this, I don't remember what I wanted to do. Yeah, this is still defended, and you don't have any ugly tactics here, because I can defend just this way, so this is completely playable. But in the position with Toem to e3 and king to c1 and the r to f2, you involve too much pieces into the attack, and you don't have any compensation because everything is well defended. But here, this is not defended. And now, MadTanker strikes with pawn to d7, and now you have to be very careful with what you decide to play here. I mean, one of the moves to be played here, even this looks very terrifying, would be the limb going here, and then you would survive because this is still defended. But here in the position we have wing to e6, which is a blunder, because now it goes with Chimp to c8, and this move is incredible. You can't take, as this is going to be taken with check, and after this, then this is going to be game over. So very sad for you. If you decide to defend, I don't know, this way, then you're going to get some very bad move here, because pawn to d8 would promote to this. So you can't even run here, because else I'm going to throw the chimp here, or even catcher here. Let's say, if you decide to go here with the brain, do we have something good here? I mean, I try to see if there's a mate here, but I kinda don't see it, else I'm blind. I see that I can just take it, and here there is a threat of a checkmate, so I'm not sure how I'm going to defend that. So maybe you try to get here, but here I can decide to play with a normal check here, and after king runs here, then I'm going to be up some material here. So normally I'm going to get here, but you have 102 points, so that's going to be here. Let's see if I find something better here. So with wing to d7, no, excuse me, it's not what I wanted to do. Yeah, with brain to f8. So how are you going to defend this? Maybe with the simple chimp to b8? And now there is a threat of going here with a check and a mate. So maybe you're going to defend this way, and then I'm going to promote, and this goes with check. And now once the brain goes to g7, normally you're surviving this. This looks very bold here, I have to say. And now maybe the threat is going to go here with the mate. Okay. So here, if you try to get with this position, I guess maybe I already showed that. And now this is not check, but you have to be careful, because if you take this is still check and you're losing the game. So in this position, this is very hard to defend. I'm not even sure that you have to wait to defend, because even if you try to go here, I'm just going to take it, and then what do you do against this promotion? You're just losing the game. So this is why in this position on move 28 that Artika decides to resign the game, as there was not a lot of things to be done there. So very sad. The Chtulu were clearly winning the game, but you have to be careful against this very ugly chimp. So congrats MadTanker to have won the game. We're going to see the other game now, which is played, and this is also a wild game, so we'll see how it goes. Okay, so for the second game, now Artika gets the white pieces with the Centaurs faction, and MadTanker gets the black pieces with the Tengus faction. The Centaurs allows you to move your opponent's pieces without their will, so you can dismantle their position and their harmony. On the other hand, the Tengus can react to threats, because they can dodge the threats or even counterattack. So you have to be very careful when you want to strike against them. Let's see how it goes. The game starts with ram to d4. Now we have pawn to d5, and immediately if you want, you can decide to push the pawn thanks to this ram. This is the power, you can push opponent's pawn from one square. But instead we have Satyr to f4, which is played, oak to f5, ram to e3, pawn to e6, Satyr to b5 with check, throw to d7, bear to f3, oak to g4 here. If you want to play this move first, you have to put this move on the way, and that would be better, because after bear to f3 and oak to g4, this is very hard to kick this pawn, because if because if you push this, that would threat the oak with a pawn, and on this very case, the oak can decide to teleport on the four corner square, so for move and capture. So here, okay, this is very hard to defend. So a short castle is played. Now we have pawn to a6, kicking the Satyr, and here you should put the Satyr here on e2, and then after, let's say, you go here, you go for a trade, and normally you would be a little better here. But instead we have Satyr to d3, which is played, and now pawn to f6. I guess the idea here is to go with this move, but for now you can still get back there, so nothing to worry about. We have bear to d2. I guess the idea is to try to slide this, and then this oak wouldn't be as efficient as before. But now we have pawn to h5, and you have to be very careful on what you do. At the same time, this move is very bad, because you have three ways just to counter it. The first way is to play a pawn ram to h4. You can put this here, but at the same point, then this doesn't work, because if you play this, there's just captures, 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 and then you have to move the shogun here. So maybe you can run into a very weird position with this kind of thing, but the Centaurs are still up 1 point of material, and there's just way threatening to get it here, they're threatening to get it here, and okay, you can decide to defend with the dojo, but we don't feel comfortable after something like, I don't know, push here the ram, you're going to slide the tent. Normally you'll be a little better here. The second move, which is a little better here, is to use the Satyr ability to drag the pawn in front of the Satyr. So now you see that this thing is pretty trapped here in the position, and this also doesn't work because you run into that. And later on, after this, maybe you want to get this and try to force the trade here and take with the bear. The third move, which is the best of course to be played, is start Satyr to g6 with check, and after the king runs to e7, now you can try to go for ugly tactics here. So maybe you can try to slide and try to get this on the board, but you have to be careful about this going back. So maybe after this and this, maybe you can drag this pawn, and now this oak can't do anything, so maybe one day it would trade itself against the bear, and now I think the position is clearly winning for you. So I don't know what is sense to be played here, so maybe you try to strike back, let's say a random move here, then maybe you can play that, then maybe the crow slides, and now maybe the bear goes to e5, and after this you can't capture because you're going to have some very bad time here. I think the centaurs are clearly winning this position. But instead we have 10 to c1, which is a blunder, because it allows pawn to g5, and now this satyr is going to be trapped here, so very sad. At the same point, you can still get this very lovely move with satyr to g6 with check, and after the king runs, now you can try to get something on the way. Only problem is that you can't even take here with the idea of check, because at first this is blocked, second you're going to lose something, so this is still dead, but at least you uncastle the king. So in the game, instead we have pawn run to h3, so trying to counterattack. But of course the oak exchange itself, and then the Tengus won the pawn here, won the Satyr. So now we have chief captures on f4, and the Tengus are winning the game. Here you can play a lot of moves here. You can decide to play the oak to h6, and as this chief is not well placed, you have to be careful where you're gonna go for. So chief to g3 can be played, and now you have to defend this square, so maybe you would play the crow to e7, try to get here, and normally if you play something like crow here, shogun here, and castle coincide, you're going to be okay. But instead in the game we have dojo to h6 immediately, so trying to be sure that this square is defended, but bear to f3 is played. The oak to d6 is played, attacking on the chief, which goes to h4. Now shogun goes to e7, and after round to c4 we have captures, and crow to b6, satyr to b3, and long castle. I'm just going to comment some capture here. You could decide to take back here, and even there's crow here, you can just decide to get back here, and after, later on you can try to get some pressure here. That could be interesting. Also, after captures and here, you can decide to come back here and try to get the pressure over this pawn. But that can be understandable, that satyr to b3 can be interesting, because later on, if this crow dares to move, you can drag this pawn, and that would weaken the king. But this crow is not meant to move here. After short castle, now let's see the position a little. You have something to attack on the queen side, but this is not well placed. This is not doing anything, it has no square. Here you have to slide this, and this chief is very bad placed here. You have to find something. So maybe you can try to slide it here, and then try to slide it here, and you would continue the attack. But instead we have a 10 to d1 immediately, which is played, and it runs into king to b8, run to f3, and shogun to e8. So now the Tengus try to replace themselves to get an attack, and I guess the idea is to get to this square. Now we have run to e4, dojo to g6, so trying to get some pressure here, and now we have run to d5, which is opening the position. I'm not sure opening the position immediately is good. I think this chief is very trapped. So we have captures, now ram captures. Okay. You could decide to go for a satyr capture, because your satyr is not doing a lot of things on the board, but rank captures also works. Only problem is that that starts to open the lines here, and I think the Tengus are better here. So oak to e5 is played, and now it threats to capture here. One way to defend this is to play here, and if you capture that, you can push the piece one square diagonally. I mean, the 10th goes diagonally one square, but the piece would be pushed out up to 3 squares, and eventually it gets out of the board, so it gets captured. But instead, we have bear captures, and now it allows the shogun to go into the position. And I don't feel at ease in this position because there's some threats going on the board. So something that you could try here is to play chief to e4, trying to get here, but only problem is that you would capture here, and that would be a threat. So how are you going to defend this? Chief to d4 is tried, but now the shogun goes to g5 and it threats to go here, and this is mate. So now you have to defend a little the position, and this is not as easy as it looks. So you could have tried this, why not? But here instead we have ram to g3, which is played, and now, okay, we have a crow to e7, and I guess the idea is to go here and threat that at the same time, so you see that there's a lot of pressure, and this is hard to defend. So here in this position, 10 to c3 is tried. You could immediately go for 10 to c5, trying to defend a little more the position. But I mean, after crow here, then you would maybe sacrifice itself and try to get a better position. So this is hard to defend. So 10 to c3 tries to defend the position, but now crow takes d5. And now what do you do here? We have 10 takes c5, 10 to c5, that pins here. So very interesting to get better position. Now pawn to a5 is played, and you should take here with the Satyr. And after captures, maybe you get here to try to get something, but after captures, the game would continue, and then the chief goes to f4, and it turns into an endgame where somehow the center would be a little better. But here in this position we have 10 captures, and this is the blunder here. Because now after a crow takes d5, now you force to takes with the Satyr, and now the dojo goes to d6, and it goes with a big pressure here that you don't really like. So we have chief to c4, which is played, and after that we have pawn to f4. And you see that this is going to kick this very quickly. Even if you try to take here, there's just going to be capture, and now basically the Tengus are winning. So how do you defend against this position? This is pretty hard here. So in the game we have Satyr back to g2 trying to defend, but now pawn takes g3. And now what do? You can try something like this. Even this doesn't feel that convincing, but this is a way of defending the position because you control dark squares here. But in the game we have ram captures g3, and now the shogun captures g3. And now, what do you do here? I mean, the position is very confusing, this is pinned, maybe one of the dojos are going to join the game. So here we have 10 to f1 trying to defend, but now it allows the dojo to go to d2, and now there's a threat of checkmate. And I can tell you, there's no way to defend the position. No freaking way. The only problem is that even if you try to slide this, they're just going to stack the dojos here, and then after that they're going to try to get this on the position, and you're going to lose the game here. So hard. You can try something else which is very bold, is to play ram to h4 here, and okay, if you take, then you're going to be taken by the 10th. Only problem is that now you have dojo to g4, and okay, you can try to get a counter push here to try to avoid this, but this is very hard to be played here. So here's something that you could try, and I think this is a little powerful here. After against that, you can play even shogun to e3 check immediately, and after, let's say, king goes to g1, h1, now the dojo goes to e4. d4, excuse me. I'm still tired here. And now, how do you defend against checkmate? So maybe you're going to run here to exchange the queens, but now you can immediately play dojo takes h4. The range is not sufficient, so you have to block with a piece. If you block this way, this is a very checkmate that goes here. So you play with the 10th. Now you play dojo to d1. So what do? If you decide to defend here, I'm just going to take, and this is checkmate. So you defend with the chief. And now let me show you something. Dojo takes h3, captures is forced. Now shogun captures h3, so you can't take it because this is pinned. So king to g1 is forced, and then you capture this, and this is checkmate. So basically you're losing the game. Instead, in the game we have chief to f4, which is tried, but unfortunately that hangs the piece and with mate. And this is immediately seen by Artika, so they decide to resign the game on move 34. And yeah, again, sad for them. But congrats, MadTanker, to have won both games. This is very cool. But you see that more and more the player tends to master their faction. Even if this Tengus versus Centaur game, the Tengus didn't have a lot of activity with their pieces, like the abilities of the pieces. So somehow this was some kind of chess-like game. So yeah, this is kind of unfortunate. But don't worry for this. We're going to see each other next time on round 4 of the Matches Neuro tournament. See you then. Bye.